I have a pun for you. It's a pun that is very much rooted in this YouTube channel. You ready?
Yeah.
You know that episode of Doctor Who we watched? There's 2 episodes.
Yeah.
They were very twee. Yeah, so
I thought you were going to say it was one for the underground fans.
Well, yeah. So the thing is, Homo reptilia, or Silurians, or whatever you want to call them, it's so woke these days, can't even call people Silurians. It's just a great idea, isn't it? I'm sure that I read somewhere that the 3 science fictions ideas are, they came to us, they were already here, and I can't remember the third one, we were them all along, or something stupid like that. But this is just a great idea, and you know it's a great idea, because it was a great idea back in 1970 as well. And the thing is about this episode, and this is fine as it goes, is it's very much just a retread of the Silurians, isn't it? I mean, it does feel very much like just replotting that basic idea. And whether it's because of that, or whether it's because it's this particular writer, Chris Chibnall, and I'm very aware that my feelings about Chibnall have been quite very well defined over the last few years, so I'm trying hard not to get too swayed by that. But whether it's because the idea comes from the 1970s, this just feels like a very, very trad Doctor Who story. Like a really, really traditional Doctor Who story. Now let's think back. Rose is, to a greater or lesser extent, a retreading of Spirit from Space, isn't it? Or is it a retreading of Terror of the Autons? But basically, no, it's Spearhead. Taking that basic premise and using that as our launching pad for New Doctor Who. So that idea works, because Rose is brilliant. I have to say, I'm not entirely sure this does. And it frustrates me, because there's an awful lot of good stuff about this. My most good stuff about this is the Silurians, Homo reptilia themselves, because I think they are beautifully well realised. Unlike previous, like when we did the Daleks, for example, they evoke the original Silurians but put a new spin on it. I like the fact that we've got overtly female Silurians, which sounds a bit ridiculous, but that just adds an extra spin. We've got the different classes, which was touched upon, but a lot of that works for me. A lot of that works for me. And I like the fact that front and centre is the fact, and this is obviously rooted in the DNA of the programme, front and centre is the fact that they are a race just like ours. It's just that they're reptiles, we're mammals, let's crack on. And all that's great. There's other good stuff in this episode as well. I think, is her name Mira Sayal?
Yes.
Yeah, I think she's brilliant. She got a great presence on screen, and I think she's a fantastic, one of the great could have come back characters in Doctor Who, quite frankly. I also like the little kid, Elliot, was it? He was lovely. I like that. And that whole family setup. And I do enjoy very much the trauma at the heart of it, of, you know, that where she the lady whose name escapes me now, Elliot's mom, is the one who gets suckered into killing the... Ambrose, thank you. Ambrose is the one that gets suckered into killing, and that...
It's a silly name, I don't like it.
Fair, well, there we go. Well, yes, and it's very hard to like at all, because, you know, the trauma of that... The problem is, not only is it a bit twee, it's a great pun, I've used it again, but it all feels just a bit flat. And it saddens me to say that. Now, the one thing I think we've come to rely on is great performances from Matt Smith and Karen Gillan and Arthur Darvill. And they all work as well as they can, but I have to be honest, and again, I'm trying really hard not to be too swayed by any foreknowledge of this writer, but I just think they've got nothing to work with here. Now, Lib laughed at the squeaky bum time a bit at the end.
Of like when we were having our baby, and we were like, oh.
Squeaky bum time, yeah. But it just doesn't ring true to me. And this is obviously off the back of the prior hour or more of Doctor Who. A lot of Smith's lines, though he delivers them with his usual level of gusto, just don't quite pop in the way that I expect them to. And I can't put it down to Smith. He's shown himself to be a very reliable performer at this point. I think that Amy's stuff has the usual sass, But again, it doesn't resonate quite properly with me. I think Rory's quite well captured in this episode. I love the fact he gets so cross with the Doctor, and I love the fact that already, at that moment where the Doctor says...
Rory who?
Sorry, I've forgotten. Yeah. But were there a character called Rory in this? The moment where the Doctor says, I need you with me, or something like that. Oh, already, tragically, this TARDIS team is cemented, and they work brilliantly. And we do think about, or at least I think we were led to believe that we were going to think about this being very much a Doctor and his female companions thing. But this story shows very clearly, up until a certain point, that this is a threesome. This is going to work out like this, and this is going to be great. But of course, it doesn't. And this is another thing that I think slightly damns this episode, which is the dialogue at the end. The moment at the end when Rory has, well, whatever has happened to Rory, that zings. That bit with Smith and Gillen in the TARDIS is just heart-wrenching. And it overshadows everything else, even the revelation of the bit of the TARDIS that's in the gap. By the way, oh my gosh, we made reference the other day to some of the, in About Time, about some of the decisions made in relation to this series. I can't wait for that volume of that book to come out, whenever it does. But Matt Smith reaching through that gap, my gosh, that looked a bit rough. And the tower exploded, the drill exploding at the end. I don't know. I'd forgotten some of those effects don't quite... But we don't worry about effects in this conversation because it's not really what Doctor Who's all about. But that end bit, which I'm assuming was written by Moffat, because it ties into the wider story of the... it just pops in a way that the rest of the episode does. Now, listen, I'm not laying the blame at anybody here, but whether it's the combination of some of the dialogue and the trad nature of the story, maybe it's just the fact that for old fans like me, it just feels like a little bit of a retread. And let's be honest, the Silurians is a story you can retread in lots of different ways, but we did already retread it in the Sea Devils. So, it's a pity. It really is a pity because there's so much about this. The Silurians, obviously, Homo Reptilia, are going to go on and have, a brilliant future in the programme. I'm so glad that they feature now. They're a thing in Doctor Who, because they're a race that deserve to be front and centre. Yeah, it's a shame, but it just feels a bit drab. A bit, for want of a word.